He's that shining light on a hill. He's a paragon character. But if you take that to the extreme, he's Peter Pan. He never wants to grow up, and he's not going to grow up if he doesn't take on the responsibility. And what happens if Peter Pan never grows up? Well, you either become Peter Pan-y in Hook, Robin Williams, or you become something else.
Hello, folks, and welcome to Author Adjacent, a show about the journey from hobbyist writer to professional author. I'm your host, Michael Vadney, and today I am sitting with returning guest, Sam Paisley, author of The Winds of Change. Welcome back to the show, Sam.
Thank you for having me back.
Of course. Little does everybody know, we've actually been talking all evening, so, if you want to see what happened with that, check out the previous episode where we did dig into Sam's journey from writer to author and what he's been up to. But for this episode, we are going to be digging into a particular topic, and that is life lessons from fiction. And the first thing that I wanted to start out with for this topic is, why did you pick this for today's subject for the episode?
For some background context, when Michael and I were chatting pre-show, as they say in the industry, he said, what topic would be interesting for you to talk about? And this is the first thing that came to mind. And the reason it's such an important topic to me is because it's actually one of the main reasons I started writing in the first place. So as I mentioned in the last episode, but just to go into a little bit more detail, stories played such an integral part of my life. And a lot of people say that, and it sounds cliche, but as an example, the song that I walked down the aisle to at my wedding was the theme song from Scrubs. My first dance with my wife was the Neverending Story. We walked into the room to a song from 10 Things I Hate About You. She walked down the aisle to High School Musical. I proposed to, it was a mix between Love Actually, 10 Things I Hate About You, and I had a song from Sky High. So stories are very important to me. And my dog is named after a character from Banjo-Kazooie. So it's really integrated in there. Part of the reason, as I reflected on why that is because of, first of all, I think escapism is a wonderful thing, or can be a wonderful thing. But the kind of meta lessons that we learn from stories are in many ways more powerful than, let's say, quote unquote factual realities, right? If someone says, look both ways before you cross the street, sure, but why? Well, cars are coming. You don't want to get hit by a car. That makes a lot of sense. That's a little story right there. When I was writing this series specifically, something I really wanted to do was I wanted to write a story that was on its surface just an enjoyable ride. Something that people would love to read and really enjoy. But for those who were interested and for those who wanted to dig deeper, had as many layers as I could fit with depth and meaning, and something that you could come back to in a couple of years and be one of those stories where really it resonated you with at this age for this reason, and then it resonated with you at this age for another reason, and then when you read it to your kids, it had an entirely different meaning. And those stories are, to me, powerful and rare, but deeply, deeply meaningful. And part of the reason it took me a decade to write this was also figuring out that balance. I started writing when I was like 22, so I didn't know that much. I'm only 33 now. I don't know much more, but hopefully you learn a little bit in a decade. And so the topic of what lessons we can draw from stories and what meaning we can get from them is really, really important to me, and it's important to my writing.
What would you say is a poignant lesson that you have learned from fiction that you carry with you in your daily life?
The first one that comes to mind, because I inserted it as much as I could into The Winds of Change, which is book 1 of the series, is what it means to grow up. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of quote unquote coming of age stories, and they range from everything from, the first one that comes to mind is something like An American Pie, which is a very specific type of coming of age story, all the way to movies like Good Boys, which is a comedy from a decade ago, which is about kids in grade 6 and they realize there's a whole range of stories. For me, I wanted to write a book about what it means to grow up, and a story that really resonated with me from this context is the movie Hook, which is...
Good pick.
Thank you. And I think it's a really great movie for a lot of reasons. For those of you who aren't familiar, it's from, I think, maybe 93, maybe 91. It's a story of Peter Pan. He's grown up. He's forgotten that he was Peter Pan. Not a spoiler. That's like
The first 5 minutes, yeah.
um, and it played by Robin Williams, which is a fantastic meta pick because he was obviously such a childlike talent who could bring just such joy into the world. So to see him as a really buttoned down character was also like a great real life kind of encapsulation of that character. So just really good casting. And that's a story of what happens when the boy who never wants to grow up grows up, for lack of a better term, too hard, right? And forgets what it means to be a child and how that affects him and his family. And that story is actually about finding your childhood again and finding it as an adult in a way that you're able to live through the main plot of that is him reconnecting with his kids in many ways, and that's a story of adulthood, and what it means to relive your childhood through having children, which is one of the great joys of having children. Right, you get to experience everything anew, but with the benefit of age and wisdom. And so I wanted, the themes of Peter Pan, and what it means to never grow up, were really really interesting to me. So I set the story with two characters who are graduating high school, which is a very liminal time in people's lives, right, where they're maybe making decisions about the future, but you really don't know all that much, and you're kind of in this quintessential growing up moment. And I started writing the book when I just finished university, so I was also in one of those moments too, and I was, self-reflecting on what I wanted to do with my life and where I wanted to go, and all of those different things. So, wrapping around all of that is kind of the theme of what it means to take proper responsibility for yourself and your life, and for these characters, that's an incredibly important part of growing up, right? It's not just getting a job, it's not just you know adulting, as people say, but it's properly seeking out the responsibility that you can and need to take on, and doing that earnestly and to the best of your ability. And for Cooper and Reed, that means a destiny that they didn't ask for, that they don't want. But then I try to reflect everything as much as possible around that lens and that focal point thematically, and you can see that with characters like Sophorus, who it's the prologue, so you'll see right away, but have this tremendous responsibility. Characters like Pax, who is an incredible foil for many reasons for all of those things. So, that was a really important theme, and something I tried to put in the book, and it's something that I took as an example from Hook, from Peter Pan, from a whole bunch of other stories.
Yeah, so what you're talking about is theme, really. Like the theme of a story. And I feel like that's a subject that a lot of writers, especially very early on in their career, have a difficulty grasping. Like, what is theme? What does that even mean for a story? I've had conversations with people around theme when I ask them, like, what is the theme of this story or that story or your story? And people can write a whole story and not realize that they have a theme, that they have a lesson that the story is teaching you. But it's really interesting when you start digging into that and you read a story that is intentionally teaching, intentionally showing you a lesson. It's not always the lesson you should be learning. You shouldn't always be internalizing the same lesson that the character is. But that's really what we're talking about, it seems like, is like these life lessons that you can pull from stories is the theme of the story. So would you say that if you had to pick one theme, one life lesson that you want your readers to learn from reading your book, is it that what you're talking about the responsibility of really becoming an adult?
At the end of the day, themes a very large topic and definitely correlates into everything that we're talking about. To infinitely intertwined. And I think, on what I'm where that's going kind of in my head is that people are going to pick up on things that are personally relevant to them. So even if I write something and I could beat you over the head with it, which I hope I didn't do in this book, you might take something completely different and be like, oh, the theme of this book is don't play with fire. And it's like, well, that could also very well be true, Don't tempt fate, don't tempt destiny, even though that's not what I was trying to get. So, I hope that readers take something profound or meaningful, I should say, from my book. But yeah, for me, a major, major theme, and where all the characters are really foils against one another, is what it means to grow up, what it means to be an adult, and kind of the sub clause of that is what it means to take on the responsibility of your life. Take on the burden that only you can take on, a weight that's worthy of carrying, and to carry that forward honorably, even when it's difficult, even when it's challenging, because that is your responsibility and your duty to yourself and to those around you. And if you don't do that, there's a very clear character who I make explicitly clear the dangers of not doing that. Um, it doesn't just negatively impact those around you, but you're actually making yourself, in this instance, the worst possible version of yourself. But um, you're not serving yourself as well as you could.
Multiple times already in this interview. We're only like 10 minutes in, and you've answered like 2-3 questions before I ask them. So bravo, you're doing great. But what I wanted to ask next then is, you have all of these lessons that you want your reader to learn, but how do you show your reader the lesson that you want them to take from this, the life lesson? Like,
So
mechanically with the story, how do you do that?
yeah, so again, I think obviously there's going to be room for interpretation. Like you could literally, I'll say Hansel and Gretel, and to me the theme is like, hey, maybe don't wander into the woods without like a plan. For other people, it's like, uh, don't trust old lady first. Yeah, exactly. Like there's room for interpretation for every story, but mechanically, um, I think, and this ties really deeply into theme specifically. Um, what I did, and part of the reason that this book was kind of such a labor to craft from a storytelling mechanical perspective, is taking that one theme of, let's say, growing up, what it means to grow up, then creating a character centralized around that theme. So for the main two characters are Cooper and Reed. You could really apply this to either of them. I'm going to use Cooper for the sake of example. Um, So you have Cooper, and you build a character around that. So Cooper is your prototypical high school kid, graduating high school, doesn't really care about the future, not because he's an idiot, but just because he's like, why, I'm happy right now. I don't really want to worry about that. I'm 17 years old. And then using his best friend Reed as a direct foil, and the direct foils, that being um, overly concerned about the future to the point of paralysis. If I don't get 100%, if I get 95 on this test instead of perfect, my grade point average is going to go down by 0.1%, which means I'm going to need to get this other mark in this course, which means I'm not going to get into this university class, which means I'm not going to be able to get into med school, which means I'm not going to be able to blah, 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 right? So, okay, you've got two foils. Then building kind of the world around that, and I mean, it all comes down to characters in the end. But because this is a science fantasy story, I'll talk about characters and I'll talk about the actual world building and magic system. So every single character. So let's say we add Pax to that mix, who's a character introduced really early. I won't give spoilers about anything past like chapters 1, 2, or 3.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, but that character who's really important has to foil like his choices of what he's done with his responsibility, and how that's affected his life up to there, and then Sophoris, and what his responsibilities are and how he's bared those weights appropriately. So all of these things are direct foils to Cooper as a main character mechanically, in terms of their choices that they're making, and how it's affecting the story, right? So now you're kind of with every single instance of a character through the story re-emphasizing that theme, um, by showing like, if you don't take enough responsibility, this is what can happen. Then in my world, there's multiple different magic systems, but one of the main magic systems is the four Greek elements, so air, fire, water, earth. Um, and taking elements of that as a magic system and again mapping it onto all of the characters. So in my book, the element of air is the element of levity and the element of the spirit, like the human spirit. Fire is passion in the mind. Water is depth in the soul, and earth is gravity and the body. So mind, body, spirit, soul, um, levity, passion, depth, gravity, and air and earth, which are opposites. Levity and gravity are obviously opposites, and then the abilities that they imbue to your body or to your spirit are somewhat opposites. Passion and depth are fire and water, not as opposite, but they're also not as opposite in terms of elements, right? They're both kind of ephemeral and don't have shape and don't have form. So you're, building the magic system to map onto the character traits of the people who are using the magic system, which then maps onto like Cooper, who utilizes air, which again, not really a spoiler because you can kind of see that on the cover. And I won't say how or why. Very, very, he is levity incarnate, right? Like he is, for lack of a better term, like you call him an airhead, pun intended.
Pun received.
Yeah. Always also, I mean, he wants to lift people's spirits, right? That is who he is. He wants to, if he's that shining light on a hill. He's a paragon character. But if you take that to the extreme, he's Peter Pan. He never wants to grow up, and he's not going to grow up if he doesn't take on the responsibility. And what happens if Peter Pan never grows up? Well, you either become Peter Panny and Hook, Robin Williams, or you become something else. So, like, again, and same with Reed. Reed's super passionate. He works in his mind. He's very smart. He's not like, smartest person in the world type smart, but but what happens when your passions get too far? Well, you can either try to shut those down and not feel anything, or you can explode with rage and with fire and all of those different things, right? So mechanically now we're talking about mapping the magic system and how the magic system informs the themes. And then I've got a bunch of other, I won't go into too much detail in terms of the magic system, but there's another magic system in terms of the actual weapons that they use. And the weapons are very much, Cooper's weapon is a cloth sword. So it's literally a sword that is essentially a ribbon until he decides to make it a sword, which is a weapon that cannot do harm unless he chooses it to do harm. And again, it's about kind of taking on that responsibility. It's a very childlike, playful weapon. It's basically like a toy until he decides it's not a toy. And so mechanically, it's really making sure that you're starting at that kernel. In this example, it's Cooper, and you understand the character and you understand the theme, and you're building out foils and a network that all reflect in on that theme at every single instance. And same with the magic system, and same with the world, and same with the plot. And if you can do that well, which I hope I did, but I'm biased, then hopefully those themes resonate internally with your audience. And then from there, the lessons that you can glean from it, I think, are going to be significantly more impactful. And more importantly, what's really interesting to me is when someone reads it and it's like, Reed's my favorite character. That was me in high school. I had an Excel matrix of where I wanted to go and blah, 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 blah. Or Cooper's my favorite character, or whoever, because then they're gonna pick up elements of the theme. Name for book 2, elements of the theme, instead of elements of time. But
there you go. You heard it here first.
Yes. They're going to pick up different elements of the theme from all sorts of different sources in the story, but they're all pointing to the same North Star. So very complicated mechanical answer, but hopefully that's helpful for anyone listening.
I won't say that it was overly complicated. It was very detailed, but that is kind of reflective of your style in the story. Like when you read the story, you can see that a lot of thought was put into how this all connects, because all of it comes together. I'm kind of like blocking myself now. All of it comes together and fits into like this intricate puzzle, like I was saying in the last episode. And honestly, hearing you talk about it now, I think about the story as you're explaining it, and I see even more pieces of it. And not only did you put this puzzle together, you put it together in a way that was different than expected. Because when you learn about these characters and you learn about the themes of the elements of wind and fire, you almost stereotypically expect them to have the opposite elements. You expect the charismatic sports star to be passionate fire, and you expect the nerdy intellect to be like cold wind or something like that, or ice or something like that. But you blend it, you change it, but it still makes sense. It's really well done. It's very well thought out.
Oh, thank you. It was a labor of love. That's for sure.
I would call it success. I don't know if you've seen previous episodes, but I am definitely a filler of the hype-o-meter. I will fill that hype. Actually, interesting question. So you brought out the Greek elements into the story to represent different themes for different characters. Now I'm even more interested to see who these people are. I don't want to say that because that's
Well, I know
spoilers.
what you're
So
asking, and the short
yeah,
answer is you will in book 2. Very,
good.
very clearly, yeah.
I want to meet them.
It's for those who are extremely confused because you haven't read the book.
Go out and read the book. That's the answer.
Yeah, exactly. That was what. So the magic system in book 1 is, I would say, there's probably 3 overlapping magic systems at the exact same time. Depending on how you want to slice it, you could call it 2, you could call it more, but 3 to be safe. And so there's the let's say time and space magic. Let's say there's the magic of the weapons that they use and the kind of combat style, and then there's the elemental magic, and all of them are integrated in one another. And as you probably could tell from the last answer, they all fit together in a very kind of succinct way. However, book 1 it's a trilogy. It's not the complete story, and you get hints of, actually very, very clear as to where book 1 leaves off and what's going to happen. Large arc in book 2, and you get book 2 is a real deep dive into the magic system and into the lore and into the world. So for as much as I built in book 1, it was also very much foundational. And book 2, you just jump right into it, and the power, it's not like it's a massive power scaling issue, because the powers are more or less the same, but the way in which powers are used and explored is significantly deeper, because now you're already ingrained, you already understand how it works.
No, that makes sense. And all of it is still reflective of the lessons in your story.
Yes.
So, hypothetical question then. I'll admit I'm putting you on the spot here. You use the classic Greek elements for these themes, for these lessons. If you were to expand this into the classic Chinese elements of adding metal and wood, what would they thematically represent within your story?
Oh, that's a very difficult question, and I'll tell you, I'll try to improv an answer right now. And I'll first,
don't worry, if we don't like this, we'll just cut it from the episode and no one will ever know.
Okay. Well, I'll try to, let me vamp for time while I'm thinking, but
okay, sounds good.
So part of the reason that's challenging, yeah, part of the reason that's a challenging question, it's a good question, is because so much of the book, a central theme is balance. And so fire, water, earth, air, they balance each other thematically really deeply in terms of the obvious. Earth and air are kind of opposite elements, and fire and water, but then also in the creation myth of the world as a whole, and kind of the Judeo-Christian creation of, like, first there was light, and then there were the stars in the sky, and then there was earth, and then there was people, and it's like almost the like fire, water, air, earth. So there's a lot that I've built into the 4 elements specifically, even in terms of the coloring and the positioning of the series symbol, which is, let me see if I can get this clearly. You're getting all the details right now.
I'm okay with this. This is a great time.
This spiral white. You can't really see it so clearly there. Maybe
I can say you might be able to see it on the sprayed edge a little better.
Oh yes, okay. So
there we go.
There we go. The 4 symbols. So you can see the main symbol there. 2 spirals and then 2 lines, which are broken down there. The top spiral being white, which is air, and then fire, because those are both
ephemeral.
You can't touch them. The more solid ones being earth and water. But then the colors, so white being on top and red being on bottom, and then you can't really see it, but like the bottom line would be black, opposite of air. So air and white, white and black are opposites, and then red and blue are opposites, but also represents a much deeper thematic, which I don't really talk about that much, of heaven being white, being air, hell being red at the bottom, earth being obviously the bottom layer, and water being kind of above earth, which is also how the physical reality is. But the perfect blend of them in total balance, in total synchronicity. So all of that to say, I don't know. I guess the easiest answer would be that, metal and wood would probably be space and time.
That's perfect.
And to make up something
still right a now, solid answer, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. To make up something regarding that, within the story, time is there are beings of pure time, and their existence is explained more or less. I'll just directly steal from my own writing, but imagine you're walking in a hallway, a long corridor, and you're wearing a sweater, and it snags, and a piece of that sweater is made from one string, and it starts stretching all the way down. You get to the end of the hallway, and the sweater is gone, but the string is all the way down the hallway. A part of that sweater exists throughout the entirety of time. And for these beings of time, whether it's a small fragment of them or all of them, they're beings of time. It doesn't matter. So they exist all throughout time, which would be similar to metal, which is ductile, and you can pull it, and it's still metal, and it can come back together, and it's still the same amount of metal, versus wood, which would be space in this instance. It's solid. It is its own property, and it can be segmented, but it can never be put back together. So
you're doing great.
Is where I think the Chinese elements would add in. Thankfully, I don't have to deal with that in book 2. But I think that's how I would, if I like gun to my head had to force it in, I would kind of map that around.
Well, I appreciate you humoring me, as I definitely threw you on the spot there for a second. You performed very admirably. But getting back to talking about like the lessons of fiction that you can really learn from reading, from consuming all of these stories, you have a mentor apprentice kind of like dynamic in your book that has been compared to like the Karate Kid. So how can fictional mentor relationships inspire readers to seek guidance in real life, and to embrace learning and seeking help for their troubles in real life?
Yeah. First of all, I didn't know that those comparisons were being made, but I love it.
Oh yeah, it's on Goodreads.
Oh, there you go. That's awesome, because I did put a Karate Kid reference. Actually, slipped a Karate Kid and Yoda reference in one of the chapters.
Oh, nice.
I think I called one of the characters young Grasswalker.
Yeah, I remember that.
But
is that with the kid? I think that's
yeah. And yeah, I definitely did a hard Yoda reference in the marshes of Acadria at one point. But
nice.
So I think, the short answer is, like, for better or for worse, I've never shied away from asking for help. Which can be super annoying for people sometimes, because I'm the type of person who won't Google something. I'll just like ask someone, and they're like, you could have found out how to get there, like, if you just use Google Maps instead of asking me. But that's just my personality. But I think, there's a reason that we see these mentor apprentice relationships, and it's because, from a storytelling perspective, in many ways, a really good book or a really good movie or a really good show, there's, the Obi-Wan or Yoda or Mr. Miyagi are mentors for us as well. They're not talking to us directly in the scene, but you can look at those lessons and say, like, this is a good way to approach the situation. This is a good way to live. Whether it's Johnny Lawrence, and it's like, yeah, you know what, maybe I do need to, strike first and be a bit more aggressive. but that goes to the lessons that we can take from stories. And not everyone is blessed enough to find mentors, and I've had a couple people in my life, my dad as an example, who I'm lucky that he's a great mentor. But that in many ways is kind of the wisdom that we're drawing from these stories, right? No matter what that wisdom is, when you have your Mr. Miyagi, or you have your, I won't say which characters in my book because it kind of spoils a couple of the twists, but um, you we were talking about this before, but you get to write, when you're writing a wise character, someone who is significantly older than me, significantly wiser than me. I have the benefit as an author to be able to know where the story is going, so I can always know the right thing to say because I'm the one creating it. So it's nice to be able to write a wise character who has says the perfect thing at the perfect time, because you know it comes from a place, I don't know, to me it feels like it's in the back of my head almost, where it's like the wisdom is in there, I just need to pull it out. And then I get to learn a lesson because, hey, I thought of that and I learned it. I get to teach the character a lesson, and hopefully that lesson can resonate with someone else. So to answer your question, hopefully, whether it's my story or someone else's story, or a movie or a song or whatever, those mentors are kind of the theme of this conversation, right? They are delivering the lessons that you can take, and no matter where you take it from, whether it's from their mouths directly or just the knowledge that you can find someone to take that wisdom from, I think is really valuable.
We're at that kind of interesting spot in our life as well. Like you and I are both in like our early 30s, and it's really around that time that you go from, you have figured out some things and you have learned a lot of things from other people, and now you're transitioning to, okay, now it's your turn to be the mentor and your turn to pass things down. Like you were saying, you've recently become a father in the past few years, and I'm sure that is very impactful into your writing. Now that you've gotten to this point and you have these mentorship characters, it's reflective of real life. One of the themes, the lesson that like I personally internalized from a book series is from the Wheel of Time. I would definitely encourage people to read it. It is like fantasy homework
Yeah.
sometimes because it's like the Lord of the Rings and those things. It's like you have to read it at some point. But one of the reoccurring lessons, the reoccurring themes, almost word for word, is make your choice and accept the consequences of that choice. Do what you have to do, but then accept the consequences of that choice. Like don't make a choice and then kind of like moan and whine, but oh, I didn't want to do it. Like that's fine, just do your thing. Do what you have to do.
Yeah.
Um and that's a huge reoccurring throughout the story, and I've definitely like taken that and I've internalized that into my real life, and it's really pushed me in things like this show and writing, where it's like I want certain things. I want to be a certain kind of person, and that means certain things. It means I have to do stuff, and I get the joy of doing that because I get to be that person. I get to be those things. It's just amazing the things that we can really learn from stories.
When we're taking in information, I mean, all of us are guilty of this. I know I am. When someone close to you tells you something, even if it's completely true and accurate and it solves the problem, you just never want to hear it. Like if, but then for whatever reason, if someone like one step removed tells you something, then um, it's easier to take that. So when it's coming from a book or it's coming from a story that really, like, it wasn't written for you, but it feels so relevant to you, sometimes it's easier to internalize that. And we see this play out in most mentor mentee relationships. The mentee often doesn't listen to the mentor. I mean, Karate Kid's a great example, right? Like literally, Mr. Miyagi's like, "Don't fight," and Daniel's like, "No, I'm going to do it." And he's like, "The reason that I'm training you is that you don't have to fight, but you have to learn that lesson yourself, even though the mentor character knows those things." And so when you get to read someone else going through that book, entire journey to get to the same lesson, that's what fiction is. That's what thinking is, right? It's this meta truth that allows you to kind of live and die, for lack of a better term, an entire life and take the lessons from it without actually having to go through any of the risk. And that's why, to me, stories are so powerful. And that's basically what thinking is, right? When you think through, hey, should I order a pizza or make dinner? And you're like, pizza's not very healthy. I've had it 3 times this week and I could probably save the money. You're going through an entire process of like living that future out and saying, you know what, I'm going to let that future die and go this route instead. Which is exactly what's happening in a story, except that it's written for you. But you still get to take all of the lessons out of it, which is so powerful.
Again, you're really good about answering the question right before I'm gonna ask it. Phenomenal answers. Something I did want to ask you though is like Cooper and Reed's friendship is like a cornerstone of the story, like the thing that they go through where they butt heads, where they're on the exact same page. Like so much of it is around that. What lessons of like loyalty and camaraderie do you hope readers take away from that dynamic? What do you hope they learn about relationships?
For those who haven't read it, Cooper and Reed are best friends, graduating high school. They've been best friends since they were 6, and literally willing to do anything for each other. But they're not identical twins. They're fairly disparate, and it's not like the he's a jock and he's a nerd dynamic. Like buddies, they have a lot in common, but they're different in their own. They're their own people. Um, but in terms of kind of their friendship and their relationship, so again, one of the stories that's been the most impactful to me has been Scrubs, and the relationship between Turk and JD, their friendship, their closeness, one of the best friendships and bromances I think ever put to the screen.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to create a story about best friends, and that we already talked about how they're foils of each other and thematically and all that kind of stuff. But as it relates to relationships, it's actually incredibly central to the plot of the story how close they are. And I won't explain why, because that will ruin the entire story. But their closeness is as much of a strength as it is a weakness. And again, it's that idea mechanically in storytelling of exploring the depth of a character and exaggerating what's good about them all the way until what's bad about them. But some of the lessons, I mean, the lessons that you can take and maybe people do take are really understanding, again, loyalty and friendship and true friendship, the type of friendship where you are family and you have the other person's interest at heart, even when it puts yourself at risk or even when it's at your own detriment, which is rare and it's courageous. And you see that really early on where they're just kind of trading sacrifices back and forth, um, to the point where one of them should probably stop because it's not really helping anything anymore. But you also see kind of the detriment of being too entwined with another person, in any sort of capacity, and needing to become, in order to best serve the people around you, needing to become a fully fledged person in and of yourself, right? To fully embrace the strengths that you have and the weaknesses that you have, and to not rely on the other person to be a crutch, which they are to a degree at the beginning, right? They're meant to be two halves of the same whole, but not half of themselves, if that metaphor kind of makes sense. And as the story progresses, you see them grow into more and more mature people, to the point where the sacrifices they're willing to make or choose to make are far more complete sacrifices than what I would call the more superficial sacrifices, because they come from a place of true understanding and true growth and true depth. And then at that point, they've really, at least in this story, reached the apex of their arc, and you can see at the very end or in the middle or throughout. I won't kind of explain where or why, but you can see how that growth has changed them and how it reflects to where they started at the beginning. So, kind of long answer there, but I think in terms of the relationship that they have. It's understanding that you need to be fully matured and evolved and take responsibility for yourself in order to actually serve those around you as best as possible.
No, that's good. Like, the more I think about it and the more you're talking, I see a lot of Sam and Dean Winchester.
Yeah,
And I think that's intentional, given that you
there's
said
a lot there.
Supernatural was an influence for these stories. Like,
That's definitely not a coincidence for sure.
oh yeah, that's God. That kind of like brotherhood. Oh, punching my mic. That kind of brotherhood is amazing, especially when it comes across people like fictional characters that aren't like blood relations. And it's like, this is. I feel like it's stronger a little bit because it's a choice. It's, I chose you to be my brother. I chose you to be my family, as opposed to, like, yes, there is the loyalty and the responsibility to family, which is very strong, very deep. You have a generational culture there. But yeah, I just thought it was a really good setup. Like, you can very clearly see the Sam and Dean influences, which is solid storytelling, solid lessons to be learned, but also lessons to view and be like, oh, this is what not to do. Like, we talk about lessons in stories, but there's also many lessons in your story about, hey, this is what happens when you do the wrong thing, and you can internalize those as well.
Totally. And I think to go back to the question you asked at the beginning,
Please.
mechanically, um, it's really, really, so it's important to me to try to get this right, but also I think impactful in terms of how you're reading it. When you're showing, so the antagonists of the book, and again, I won't explain too much, but to emphasize the point and really hammer it home at the end, especially of the book, exaggerating the good traits to the point that they become bad and the impact that that has on an individual is a really powerful way of writing a theme into a story and a lesson into a story, right? Because at a certain point, you have to choose whichever route or path you want to go down, and you could be, let's take Sam Dean Winchester because I don't have to spoil my own book, the most selfless, self-serving, selfless, not self-serving, courageous, and altruistic person in the world. You're literally willing to die for those around you who you don't even know. However, if you look at Sam and Dean, what that does is they kind of go back and forth, just dying for each other, which just keeps cascading the problems. Like, I'm spoiling Supernatural, but that show's been
It's been done for a while. If you want to skip these spoilers, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Come back later.
But you can make the argument that if Dean didn't make the Crossroads deal at the end of season 2 to bring Sam back, then everything would have been completely resolved, and you wouldn't have had to have seasons 3 through 20, but really 3 through 5. Or if same with John. If John didn't make the deal, like in season 1, their dad. So you see this self-sacrifice to the point where the true proper sacrifice happens at the end of season 5, which should have ended the series. And for money reasons, it kept going, which is totally fine, I guess. But from a creative standpoint, again, you see that evolution, that arc to say, no, this is the sacrifice that I was born to make. This is what I need to do. This is what we've been fighting our whole lives for, and you have to let me do this. As painful as it is going to be for you to watch me make this sacrifice, you have to live your life. You have to go on, and if I do this, then everything is as it should be. Now, that was instantly reversed like 10 seconds later in the show, but hypothetically, that would have been a like top 5 series ending moments. And it really completes the arc, and it's taking that mechanical writing question of, well, I'm self-sacrificing, I'm going to jump on the grenade for someone else, and saying, okay, but if you do that, take it to its logical extreme, how is that bad? and then it becomes a negative trait of your character. And I tried to do that as much as possible in this story to really emphasize the themes that I was trying to hit.
No, I think you absolutely nailed it. Like, the themes come across very strong. The lessons come across very strong in your book. All right. I think we are running to about time at this point. This has been a phenomenal discussion about lessons in fiction, and I really appreciate it. Sam, please tell the people where can they find you, where can they find your books, and what are you working on?
Totally. You can find me I'm on Instagram and X Twitter at S Paisley Author, Paisley author. And you can find all of my stuff on my website at elementsofTime.ca. That's where you can get signed copies of all the books. While they last, I do have some special editions left. By the time that this airs, we will see if they're still there. But for right now, they are there. You can get signed copies of those, of the paperbacks, of the hardbacks, of the prequel novella. Sign up for my mailing list. I basically just tell you when things go on sale. And what I'm working on next is working hard on book 2. So these books, as Michael, as I'm sure you could tell, take a lot of time and a lot of thinking. And my goal for my readers is I'm not going to put something else out there until it is the best thing it can possibly be. So drafting, redrafting, thinking, and plotting, and working on book 2 to get that out as soon as I can. And when that is, I don't know, but it will be as soon as I physically am able to do it. That's for sure.
And you'll let people know when they sign up for your newsletter.
Exactly, yeah. It could be in a month from now. It could be in 7 years from now. Who knows? But if you're not on the newsletter, you'll never see it.
You're not going to be able to find out. So, definitely go over there and sign up for that. Awesome. Sam, thank you so much for coming on to the show. We'll love to have you again on in the future. And people, thank you for joining us. And remember, until next time, let's be author adjacent together. See you, folks. Dude, great job. That was such a good subject. Like, you